All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday, and you know what that means. Time to dive deeper into more spiritual teachings on spiritual truth and enlightenment. And coming to us from the wisdom of Dr. David R. Hawkins, and today we'll be diving deeper into the section of becoming a spiritual seeker, as well as surrendering the small self. And if we can, we will discover what we can learn from that as well. We may possibly make it to becoming the witness, which is an extremely important subject when it comes to the path of spiritual evolution and being a spiritual seeker. And so before we dive into that, happy Halloween, ladies and gentlemen. Hope it's wonderful wherever you are. And it is officially winter here for us in Colorado because we just got a frigid frozen snow a couple of days ago. So that is just fine. It's beautiful to see the first caution snowflakes of the season, ladies and gentlemen. But let's dive right into today's teaching and see what we can discover and learn, because remember, we're here to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through greater awareness and understanding of the nature of reality and ourselves, so that hopefully through that increased awareness, we can then increase the quality of our lives and the lives of those around us. So it begins today, ladies and gentlemen, by reminding us that being grateful is an important place to start. It says here, quote, "To just be grateful that you're interested in the spiritual dimension at all, that's already something that you should be grateful for." So just to be grateful that we are interested in spirituality at all is something that we can be grateful for, ladies and gentlemen. And so remember that. David Hawkins continues and says, I mean, how many people, now think of this for yourself, how many people do you see that lead a blind life? They calibrate, David Hawkins says, at 192 when they come onto the planet. And when they leave, they calibrate at 192. No change. So they really blew a whole lifetime just doing the same self-centered, greedy things all the time that a lot of us get in the trap of doing here in the material and physical realm, as we learned about in the Hermetics from the Corpus Hermeticum last Wednesday. And it was talking about that, how we can get caught in that trap of the things that we think seem to be so pleasurable here in the material realm, but it is actually keeping us stuck. And so with that being said, the Buddha said, quote, "Rare it is to be born a human. Rarer still it is to have heard of enlightenment. And the rarest of all is to have heard of enlightenment and dedicate oneself to its pursuit." And that's one of my favorite quotes there. Because really, I mean, think of it. How rare is it to be born a human? And the math on that is incredible. It's like 1 in 10 trillion or something like that, the chances to actually be here. And then what are the odds that somebody that is here, and I found this out the more that I talk to people about spirituality and enlightenment and these kind of ideas, is that it's a very low number, seemingly growing nowadays, which hopefully has to do with the evolution of consciousness through time and through the celestial cycles and some of the alignments that we may even be going through now with some of the gas giants. However, and then the rarest of all is to have having heard of this enlightenment thing and then dedicating oneself to the pursuit of that. That is the rarest of all. So to be dedicated to the searching for the truth, and you are, if you are here watching this video, so give yourself a pat on the back, is the rarest of all possible gifts that we can have. And so this goes back to the point of being grateful for the fact that we are even interested. Just to be grateful that we are interested in the spiritual dimension at all, that's already something that we can be grateful for. And once again, being grateful a good number one step in the spiritual practices that we've learned over the years on this channel and into our journeys. David Hawkins continues, as a human, you can undo negative karma and gain positive karma. And if you use these lifetimes on earth wisely, you can reach enlightenment. Key there to point out that he said, if you use these lifetimes, multiple, on earth wisely, you can undo your negative karma from previous lifetimes and gain positive karma. And then hopefully, if we can use all of these lifetimes that we are given here wisely, we can reach enlightenment. So be grateful that one is a human and that one has heard of the truth of enlightenment. He reminds us now, David Hawkins does, to be introspective. You can't walk around naively oblivious of who you are and how you come across to people. So you need a certain degree of self-awareness and the capacity for self-criticalness. Now, this doesn't mean a constant self-judgment, which is what so many of us get in the habit of doing. And then we can't stop doing it because it's all we know what to do. It's just judging and defeating and destroying ourselves with our own thoughts, which is a most unfortunate habit or, activity and routine and pattern to get into, because we can choose our thoughts, and our thoughts are the most important thing. The secret of the universe is what you think about expands, and your thoughts are things and become your life. So be very careful with the way that you choose to direct your thoughts. Now, back to David Hawkins' words here. So you need a certain degree of self-awareness and the capacity for self-criticalness to be able to see your upsides, your downside, and your limitations, and accept the reality of your personality where it is, and be introspective and reflective. It's not saying to judge negatively who you are. Somebody else will suggest something, and you say, well, I have to reflect on that. It means you're going to hold it in mind, and various facets begin to reveal themselves. You'll forget all about it, and then you have a peanut butter sandwich, and in the middle of the sandwich, you realize other significances of it. This is the importance of constant contemplation, or the meditation, or the rumination, or the ponderation, pondering and thinking on things. And that is why Hermes reminded us in the Hermetica that pure philosophy is spiritual striving through a constant contemplation to attain true knowledge of reality. In the Hermetics, it calls it Atum, the one God. And so this constant contemplation can lead to these kind of things where we'll forget all about it, and then we'll be having a peanut butter sandwich, and in the middle of the sandwich, we'll realize, it'll go ding, and we'll be like, wow, insight, synchronicity, understanding, the significance, a different significance than you had come to before. David Hawkins continues, how it affects your relationships with others, how it reflects the fulfillment of things you've held in mind, the implicit implications or limitations of what you feel you would not be able to do, and etc. All the different avenues that these kind of thought practices of reflection and being introspective can give us. So significance, Dr. Hawkins continues, and fulfillment, all these things become consequences of reflection. Now think about this, very important sentence here. For us to experience more happiness and joy and quality and get more out of life is that significance in life of things being significant for us, and also the fulfillment from and of things in life. And that's really what a lot of us only want, is just a feeling of fulfillment and satisfaction for whatever it is we do or experience. All of these things become consequences of quality reflection. It doesn't say quality reflection, but I'll add that. because it's very easy to reflect in a negative way on everything, like a lot of us get in the habit of doing. What's the old saying? Dr. David Hawkins asks. Quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living," unquote. We need to be conscious, ladies and gentlemen, and aware. And many people are extremely oblivious or asleep, maybe, quote unquote. We need to be awake. Dr. Hawkins says many people are extremely oblivious to how they come across to others, unaware of major blind spots and repetitious, repeated behavior. They make the same mistakes for decades, and you wonder, why haven't they gotten any feedback from the world or reflected personally on that? I think this has to do with the capacity, Dr. David Hawkins says, to constantly learn to have an open mind, to be able to ask, and to do so with perspicacity. Interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so let's read that again. I think this has to do, because why aren't people getting this kind of feedback and evolving through this introspection or reflection? He says, I think this has to do with those of us who do have the capacity to constantly learn, to have an open mind, which is why we are here, to be able to ask, and to do so with a perspicacity, which means the quality of having a ready insight into things, or the ability to understand things quickly and make accurate judgments of that. So if we have this readiness of mind and a unique, quick understanding, this would make sense. And so David Hawkins continues, and over the years, I could always tell who was outside of my office. I would hear the next patient coming across the floor to the office door, and I could already tell whether they were better or worse than last time. Is this that perspicacity? Well, somehow the rate, the gait, the rhythm, their stance, and as they walked into the room, they already said a great deal about the person. So with this readiness of insight, or this greater awareness and understanding of being aware of your reality and noticing things with this perspicacity, you have to be able to witness the slightest alteration of things. There are people who are completely oblivious of doing any of this, and they don't notice. And there are people who just seem to walk around life in a dream state or something, David Hawkins puts it. The interest, he continues, in the evolution of one's own consciousness, how it's evolved over time, how it expressed itself in ancient times, is still present in today's world, which is why we're here seeking to discover this for ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. And so there are people who are still mystics in this world who speak from the self. Curiosity leads to learning, and that's how the little amoeba stays alive. It has to constantly search around to find something to eat, or it's not going to be here. People do get addicted to the accumulation of knowledge for its own sake. And that's probably just a phase that people go through. And sooner or later, one begins to realize that it has to be put into actual practice, most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, and then just be intellectually conversant. So we, in this search for knowledge and understanding and enlightenment, and awareness, spiritual understanding and truth, some people can get stuck in a phase where they're literally just accumulating knowledge and not doing anything with it. And sometimes I find myself in that phase, and other times I find, oh yeah, I need to practically apply this. And sometimes that takes more research and more learning on how to take the knowledge and then transmute it, transform it into practical application. I think that's the funnest part of all of this spiritual work. And usually it's way simpler than we expected. Like he said back in the beginning, just to be grateful that we're interested in spirituality at all is a reason to be grateful. And being grateful is the number one practice to begin with, because it will change how you experience life. And so instead, we begin to realize that it has to be put into actual practice and then just be intellectually conversant. That's just part of the evolution of one's own spiritual awareness. And so first, he says, we accumulate the information, then we pursue the information to experience it for ourselves and experience for ourselves the truth of the information. People often start out with intellectual curiosity and they'll buy just about any and every book they can on these kind of subjects, philosophy, mysticism, spirituality, you know. And it's very interesting. He says, I went through that phase of my life, Dr. Hawkins says, as well as I have, and I may still be there, ladies and gentlemen. Although I don't buy as many books as I used to, I tend to just read and come back to the same collection of books that I already have. However, there are many more that I want to add to the collection. It just seems that I don't need to go further yet. We're still here and we're still working through hermetics and many other things, ladies and gentlemen, and doing that constant contemplation so that we can hopefully come to understand, which is the significance of the reflection. And so this is very, very fascinating. Hopefully you're getting value from this. I know I am, because this is profound. And this is very important, especially these simple things about being introspective and reflecting and being aware and then being grateful. And then creating this understanding that knowledge is one thing, but actual practice and application is another, to experience the truth and the fulfillment of that knowledge for ourselves. This is like Wayne Dyer puts it. He says there's a huge difference between knowing about God and knowing God. But the real only difference between that is very simple, and that is conscious contact. And to me, that would be experiencing the truth of the knowledge for ourselves, or the information, so that we come to know it through conscious contact rather than knowing about enlightenment or these things. And so he says, I had a whole wall of books on everything that you can think about. Pseudo-spirituality, true spirituality, psychic readings, people on the other side, channelings, God, I'll add mysticism, philosophy, and psychology. And then discernment arose over the years. So that's the key. If it's not coming instantly for you, that means you're doing correct. You are on the right path. When you do not understand, it means you are seeking appropriately. When you just seem to understand everything right away, you may not be asking the right questions or questioning, more importantly, the right answers. Now, and the discernment arose over the years, so there's a curiosity, Dr. Hawkins continues, sort of a wide-eyed amazement, and this is what I get when doing this kind of study, that there are realms that we weren't even aware of previously before finding ourselves on the quest of becoming a spiritual seeker and being a spiritual seeker and going through this spiritual evolution. And so you can go through, formulaic schooling and never be aware that there's anything other than the logical, material, and physical realm, linear, under the concrete. And suddenly you become aware that there are whole other dimensions. And this opens up new questions, new insights, new awarenesses, and new understandings. But most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, new perspectives. Because when you can change your thoughts, you can change your life. When you can change the way you look at things, things that you look at change, even though they may be the same thing for somebody else standing right next to you. Like, oh, there's another terrible this thing, but you're like, how is it that he cannot see the grasshopper? How is it that you cannot hear the grasshopper and then appreciate the beauty? When this guy's just like, man, can't believe, the grass is dying or something like that. It's just when you can change your perspective, you can change your quality, most importantly, which is why you're here, why we're here on this channel, trying to increase our awareness, to increase the quality of our experience, our lives. So, this wide-eyed amazement at the realms that we weren't even aware that were there before, that we were always taught through the formulaic schooling of the educational systems of nowadays that call everything spirituals just, silly. This is made up. We'll give a Halloween shout out. This is all just hocus pocus, ladies and gentlemen. But it's funny because once we do have this new awareness and we suddenly become aware that there are whole other dimensions, it immediately changes our perspective and our experience. And so now let us dive into the beginning of the section entitled Surrendering the Small Self, because this has to do a lot with what he was just describing there in becoming a spiritual seeker and the path of the spiritual student. Surrendering the small self. What does this mean, David Hawkins? Well, the personal will is trying to accomplish something as a very specific goal. So think of this. Our personal will is trying to accomplish something as a very specific goal. It usually has to do with gain or dominance or control in some way. Now, this is the ego guiding us. However, it is a survival tool. So it helped us get to this point of reality that we're in, where we have the luxury of the level of comfort that we can actually spend the amount of time and mind power on this kind of pursuit, rather than just constantly trying to survive. And hopefully we have thousands and thousands of years still left before all we can think about is survival, because we got a lot of progress to make. So, that being said, this goal usually has to do with some kind of gain, dominance, or control in some way. That is the ego. The spiritual world is more in the field of surrender, allowing, accepting, harmony, oneness. And so now, Dr. Hopkins continues, the personal will is only as strong as one's level of consciousness. This is why a big study of Dr. David Hawkins is calibrating through applied kinesiology, the science of calibrating the level of consciousness. And we've spoke about that before. We haven't gone into big detail on how to do that through muscle testing, but that is in here. And so we can talk about that in the future. I'll give us a quick rundown on an idea of consciousness and the map of consciousness. Through muscle testing, then, I discovered a phenomenon, he says, and that phenomenon then allowed for calibrating the levels of consciousness. The phenomenon is innate to life. Out of this arose a calibrated map of consciousness, which is a logarithmic scale, 1 to 1,000, which includes all possibility within this domain, with 1,000 being the level of great avatars, such as Jesus Christ or Buddha, or, if you believe Jesus existed. That's a different podcast. Buddha, Krishna, Zoroaster, these avatars. Thoth, Tahat, Hermes Trismegistus, maybe. But it's as high as you can go within this domain. That is pure enlightenment. Why? Because human protoplasm can't handle the energies. In fact, from about 800 and up, it's very difficult for the nervous system to handle that kind of energy. It gets very uncomfortable in the 800s, often quite painful or agonizing at times. Wow. Fascinating. But so talking about the energy there when it comes to consciousness, it's when you think about when you're in very low levels of consciousness, like shame, when you go from, apathy, not caring at all, up to sadness or anger, even though they're still negative levels of consciousness or low levels of consciousness, you can see that there is an increase in energy from an apathy to an anger or a sadness. You have more energy. And so the further you go up this scale, the more that you experience. And so that was just a kind of sentiment to the calibrated map of consciousness. Now, the personal will is only as strong as one's level of consciousness. So sometimes people will want to accomplish something by personal will, and that would require much more power than the personal will. And so, let's say you live at a consciousness level 190, he says, and now through personal will, you're trying to overcome a certain thing, but you don't have enough power at 190. When you get up to a higher level, he says 500 or so, but that's pretty up there. Now you would have the power to overcome this obstacle that normally in our lives we would just say, well, I didn't have the ambition or the drive to do it, which is, an easier way to explain it. We're just talking about the same thing here. This is just getting very deep into a different way to understand and explain those kind of experiences where we're just like, I don't know, I just didn't have the oomph, the will to do it. And so this is surrendering the small self, overcoming this and improving and increasing the ability of this personal will. And so when we get up to this higher consciousness level, we would now have the power or the will to do so. And so, but you haven't got enough horsepower in the engine to do it at that level. Therefore, aligning yourself with a more powerful field is what people do. Now, what do you mean, David Hawkins? What the heck? How do we align with a more powerful field? This is sounding pretty up in the clouds. Well, hold on just a second. This is going to make sense, ladies and gentlemen. For example, he says, let's look at addiction. While the addiction may take you all the way down to the consciousness 90, to surrender to quote unquote God's will, the will of Atum, the will of the universe, the will of the Tao that we are connected to, is something that you don't have the strength sometimes to do ourselves. A person, say, takes this addict, someone with an addiction, to an AA meeting, which, people can debate about those things, but which calibrates at a higher level of consciousness. And so the person says, well, you could let go of the addiction if you wanted to, and suddenly it dawns on you, because of this new field, this new energy field that you're within, around different people in a different environment, just like trying to grow a plant in terrible dirt with no nutrients and zero light, and you never watered it, it's not going to work and nothing's going to change. But when you change the environment and make it a lot better, nice nutrients in the soil, beautiful sunlight, good water, you can see how aligning with this new field could allow for a change. And so the person says, well, you could let go of the addiction if you wanted to in this analogy, and suddenly it dawns on the addict that it's true. It isn't could you, it's would you. When people have trouble making spiritual decisions, here's another example I give them. Somebody says, quote, I can't possibly forgive my ex-brother-in-law for what he did to me. And I'll say, now, if I have a 45, oh my goodness, loaded next to your temple, he says, and if you don't forgive him, we know what's going to happen. Could you then do so? And the answer would obviously be, well, yes. There would not be a second thought about it. So, oh yes, I could. So I say, well, that clearly differentiates the could from the would, the willing from the lack of willpower. So, I didn't know it was going to go this way. This is profound, ladies and gentlemen, like it always is. This is why I love reading Dr. David Hawkins' works in this little wonderful book entitled The Wisdom of Dr. David Hawkins, Classic Teachings on Spiritual Truth and Enlightenment, linked in the comments below if you want to get it for yourself to put it on your shelf. And follow along is just, and mostly what people think is could, is just that they wouldn't. They're unwilling to do so. And if you're willing to forgive anybody, and you can forgive anybody for anything, it's the will. So surrendering to the will of God is important. You see, divine will calibrates extremely high at about 850. Your personal will near 190. It's something different. So when we surrender our will to God, to Atum, to the universe, to reality, that which we are a part of, is responsible for all of creation and the miraculous that we see. When you surrender to God, we can now accomplish creation and the miraculous for ourselves. It isn't you that accomplishes it. You've surrendered the small self to the large self. Because see, if we are a part of God, then there's a great comment I had last week, and he described it like this. He said that we are a part of God like there are cells in the body. And so if God was the overall body, it depends on the cells and their operation, and the cells are a part of the body. I mean, he put it even better in his comment. I'll have to go back and share some comments with you in the future. We've got some good ones lately. Our Hermetics video last week did 2,000 views. That's 1,000 more than I've ever gotten before. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's all because of you and your support for what we do here, and we couldn't do it without you. So be sure to smash the like, share this with people that are like-minded. It helps support the work that we do. Now, the small self to the large self, because remember, this section was about surrendering the small self. And so hopefully that last 20 minutes there made sense, because it comes to this idea that it isn't us. When we can surrender and allow reality, our connection to God, and trust that it is right, and that we can remove our doubts by remembering that there is a valid reason for everything that happens. That's a mantra from Dr. Wayne W. Dyer that I love. But this, it isn't you that accomplishes it. You've surrendered the small self to the large self. The large self counts on the will of God to accomplish its goals, and therefore is capable of performing the miraculous. How many times do you see people that do something and you're like, how did they ever summon up the guts and the courage and let go of the fear and the self-judgment on all of the things that keep us, so many of us, from doing the things that we want to experience some kind of fulfillment in life from a certain perspective? Remember, you can change this perspective and experience fulfillment. However, it's not a bad thing to have goals and to try to accomplish the miraculous for yourself. And so these people, the science of lucky people, I like to call it, seem to be aligning themselves somehow with this new field. Like David Hawkins described it, aligning yourself with a more powerful field. Aligning yourself with the Tao, with God, with Atum, the universe. And when we get to this certain level of consciousness, the miraculous, ladies and gentlemen, becomes continuous for us. And what people think is miraculous is really just our alignment and our willingness to allow and flow. It says here in an interesting description that it is really just our innocence. So when you get to a certain level around 570 or 580, the miraculous becomes ordinary. And you begin to experience that in your life. You hold the thing in mind and it manifests. And you don't go, oh, isn't that amazing? Look at what I manifested. I'm, Conan the Manifester. It's like, no. that's the way it all happens. You're like, oh yeah, that's normal. That is the divine will of God. And I am a part of that. And when you can let go of your ego wants to demand and control and force and dominate, then the universe begins to cooperate with you, and the things that you were shoving and forcing and demanding to show up in your life a certain way at a certain time, when you can release all that and allow and be detached from the outcome and have a willingness to accept, those things that you were trying to force so long begin showing up in your life in greater amounts than you expected before. And actually, like it says there, you are not even amazed by it anymore. It kind of on the side, you're like, whoa, that was, but because you have come to that alignment, that conscious contact of knowing God rather than knowing about God. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a boon to knowledge and a boon to the wisdom of spiritual truth and enlightenment, and a little bit on manifesting and spiritual will there. I love talking about manifesting because it's really a way to change our life. And some people seem to think that you can just, the whole law of attraction and the secret thing made it seem like you can sit on your couch and manifest piles of money in front of you. And if someone is able to do that, then they are very unique. And most of us are going to actually have to do what it said here and put the knowledge into action and practice and practical application so that we can begin to experience the miraculous and then make that miraculous become continuous and part of our lives. Ladies and gentlemen, continue to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through greater awareness and an understanding of the nature of not only ourselves, but of reality, so that hopefully through that awareness, we can increase the quality of our experience and the lives of those around us. And remember to seek to discover the hidden wisdom of the ages and the secrets and the mysteries of our history. There's this little bee out here. He's flying around in the sun. He's like, man, these plants used to be so alive just a few weeks ago. But with the seasons changing, time goes on and the cycles go through, ladies and gentlemen. And it's beautiful regardless. I'm really enjoying watching this little bee mess around in the sunlight. But remember, ladies and gentlemen, that there is no way to happiness because happiness is the way. And if we can create the ability within ourselves to bring it to life, instead of seeking out here to get a grasp and a hold on it, to hopefully hold on as long as we can to as little as we can get, we no longer have to do that because then we are there. Then all the things we've been telling ourselves, oh, I'll be happy when I get this much money, or if I get that car or that becomes irrelevant because we are there. And then the entire journey is wonderful, ladies and gentlemen. I love and appreciate each and every one of you that spends time here with me on the premieres and in these videos, and shares your thoughts in the comments below. We've had so many great comments recently. It's almost hard to get to them all, which is a first for me, but it's very fun to see everything that everyone has to say. And I've seen a lot of back and forth in the comments with people, having friendly debates or discussions, and that is most important. We need to have our minds open, so we're going to leave the comments open, and as long as you are not going over the line, then that is just fine. We are open to debate and discussion because comparing and contrasting is how we can expand our understanding in these areas, ladies and gentlemen. So be sure to expand the description below the video there to get this book for yourself, to put it on your shelf so that you can follow along in the future and in the rest of the series, and also just reference it for yourself if you're ever having a day to where you need some spiritual truth and enlightenment to help you get to where you need to go. And also a link to C60 Purple Power, the most powerful antioxidant known to man. Give yourself the gift of health. I don't even think I still have like an affiliate connection to that. I tried to do that like a few years ago, and I literally just still use the same links that I did a few years ago. But I don't care. I'm not trying to make a few dollars off of somebody buying products in the video description box. I'm trying to recommend to you things that might actually be good and something that I've used for many years in my life. So with that said, check out C60 Purple Power. I actually need to buy some more if I have enough dollars coming up here, ladies and gentlemen. We will see. But that, is an area of life that we all interact with, and that is an area that some people always focus on when it comes to manifesting. But I'll say this to end with here, that if you're trying to manifest money for yourself, it may not work, because think of the feeling behind why. Like, how would you feel if you did have that money that you're trying to manifest? Are you actually trying to manifest a financial security, or a comfort, or a feeling of well-being and abundance? There's a big difference of manifesting feelings and connecting to those feelings of how you want to feel when you have manifested that which you are trying. It's this idea of coming from the place of completion already. So feeling as if you are already there, and then sitting in that and disconnecting from those thoughts that say, oh, I don't have enough, the scarcity, and allowing and aligning. And that's a lot about what today's video is about. So before I ramble anymore, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Be sure to smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and share this with somebody who is like-minded. Until next week, or actually until tomorrow, diving further into the Corpus Hermeticum and his secret sermon in the Mount of Regeneration and profession of silence. Fantastic, fascinating. We'll be going there tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. Once again, love and appreciate each and every one of you. And until tomorrow, be the change you want to see. Be the example you want to set.